Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's get started. In the past 1 month, you must have seen countless reports from Afghanistan. Sit back for a moment and try to recall the images that you saw. What did you see? Taliban terrorists wielding guns, world leaders at talking tables, images of violence, people fleeing their homes, troops laying down weapons, pictures of casualties, the aftermath of attacks. It makes you feel that Afghanistan is collapsing. But when you speak to leaders from Kabul, they'll tell you that a lot of this is exaggerated and that the Afghan capital is holding up. Now, we've been reporting from the hinterlands and border areas. Today, our correspondent sent us images from Kabul. And it's incredible how pictures can turn around a story. We saw bustling streets, vehicles, busy shops. Kabul looked like any other city going about its business. Tonight, we want to tell you this story. The story of Afghans holding up in the face of the onslaught from the Taliban. And this is not to suggest that Afghanistan is not going through a tumultuous phase. This is to show that some stories like these get buried in the din of gunfire and dramatic visuals. Tonight we bring you a ground report from Kabul. Also on the show tonight, leaders from the left parties and DMK attend 100-year celebrations of the Communist Party at the Chinese embassy in New Delhi. What explains this warmth for the Chinese? In contrast, Israel comes together to take on one company that challenges their policies and politics. The ice cream war has reached the United Nations Security Council. We'll tell you all about it. The great exodus from China has seen more than 600,000 asylum seekers in the last 8 years. Why are so many citizens leaving China under Xi Jinping? And as Islamic terrorism spreads in Africa, South Africa decides to send troops to Mozambique to fight militancy. We'll bring you a special report. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
Japan records 10,000 COVID-19 cases for the first time, while the government prepares to expand the ongoing state of emergency to more regions. Tokyo Olympics organizers deny any link between the event and rising cases, even as experts fear a collapse of the health system. States and business in the United States scramble to reimpose mask mandates as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new guidance to wear masks indoors in virus hotspots. The White House, too, has mandated masks indoors amid rising Delta variant cases. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met the World Health Organization chief, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, in Kuwait, pledging his full support for the global health body's probe in China into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. The US and Russia resume talks on easing tensions between the world's largest nuclear weapon powers as officials agree to meet in September after informal consultations. The two sides discuss the prospects for nuclear arms control. One of Australia's largest cities, Sydney, posts a record daily rise in coronavirus cases as authorities seek the help of the military to enforce a lockdown amid rising cases of the Delta variant. Israeli government authorities raid the offices of the surveillance outfit NSO Group after allegations that its Pegasus spyware was used to snoop on public figures. This after Israel said it is taking allegations of spying on politicians like French President Emmanuel Macron seriously. US Republican senators call on President Biden to bar Iran's hardline President-elect Ebrahim Raisi from entering the US to attend the UN General Assembly, citing human rights violations allegedly committed by Raisi. At least 3 people have died in southern Turkey as 2 forest fires rage near the tourist coastal regions. Dozens have been hospitalized while the flames ravage homes. Switzerland's Belinda Bencic and Czech Republic's Marketa Vondrousova have advanced to the women's tennis gold medal match at the Olympic Games with contrasting wins. 9th seed Bencic rallied from 5-2 down in the first set and a breakdown in the decider to beat Kazakhstan's Elena Rybakina 7-6, 4-6, 6-3. Former French Open runner-up Vondrousova thrashed Ukrainian 4th seed Elena Svitolina 6-3, 6-1 in a one-sided contest. American Sunisa Lee has claimed the coveted gymnastics all-round gold medal at Tokyo 2020. Cheered on from the stands by defending champion Simone Biles, who had pulled out of the event, citing mental health reasons. The 18-year-old clinched the Olympic title on her final rotation, the floor exercise, with a total of 57.433 points. Brazilian surprise package Rebecca Andrade won a historic silver, while Russia's Angelina Melnikova won the bronze.
For more than a month now, we have been telling you what the world wants for Afghanistan. The Americans have left Afghans to their fate. Joe Biden says Afghans are going to have to decide their future. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan believes the United States has, quote-unquote, really messed up in Afghanistan. He says a deal with the Taliban is now the only solution. No surprises there. After all, it was the Pakistani state that supported the Taliban and facilitated its resurgence. But what about the people of Afghanistan? What do they want? What are their aspirations? The future of the people of Afghanistan is at stake here, but none of the power brokers are listening to their voices. Tonight, we want to showcase those voices. WION's Anas Malik has been reporting from Afghanistan. Today, he sent us images from Kabul. This is what the Afghan capital looks like. Look at these pictures. Busy streets, crowded markets, people out and about. Does this look like a war-torn country to you? Yes, a civil war is underway in Afghanistan. There is uncertainty, there is violence, people are wary of what's coming next. But they still want to have a say in their future. On Gravitas tonight, we'll bring you their unheard voices. I'll begin with some pictures we captured today. These are from a crowded market in the heart of Kabul. This looks like any other market in the developing world. The shops are open and they're crowded. You see the locals on the streets, including women. In other parts of the country, intense fighting has become a daily affair, but in Kabul, life goes on as usual. People are holding up. My colleague Anas Malik spoke to many of them today. Here's the report, one of the reports that he sent us.
The people of Kabul are resilient. Life at Kabul's very famous Masood Chowk is currently going on. There's business as usual. I'm standing at Shahr-e-Naw, which is the city center of Kabul. You can see behind me, there is traffic that is ongoing as usual. There's a business as usual. This is the city center of Kabul by and large, and it won't be wrong to say you get all the things, be that be the dry fruits, be that be vegetables, be that be anything that is required. You get it from Shahr-e-Naw itself. As I said, there is a general sense of insecurity. There is tensions. I've seen increased deployment of police. The police personnel would be coming to you, asking you about your motives to stand on the side of the road as well. That is something that I have not previously witnessed. But the people of Afghanistan, they would want to resist an oppressive regime. They are all up for resisting an oppressive regime.
Our team in Kabul made two observations. Number one, Afghanistan's capital remains stable, but there is increased security deployment. And observation number 2, while the people are concerned about the Taliban's offensive, they remain resilient. They have full faith in the Afghan security forces, they say. At the same time, they want the political leadership, the civilian government, to do more.
My name
is Ahmed Tamim. The security situation in Afghanistan is not good. The Taliban is making advances on a daily basis and taking over provinces, and they are destroying government buildings. Because of the fear of the Taliban, we cannot come to our shop because the security situation is not suitable. If the security situation does not improve, then we will not be able to go to schools or carry out our daily routine. I request the government to ensure security so that the Taliban does not overrun the city.
My name is Bashir. We distribute these beverages in the name of martyrs. The situation in Kabul is not good. The people are coming here out of fear to seek refuge. We request the government for peace given the situation is not good. They should ensure that people can work at free will and with unity.
Some of these people could be keeping their shops open out of compulsion. Even in these difficult times, people have to earn a living. They're doing their best. But they also do it because they value their freedom. And that freedom is now under threat. Thanks, among other things, to a neighbor of Afghanistan. No prizes for guessing which one. All these years, Pakistan has been covertly supporting the Taliban. Now Pakistan is openly supporting and defending them. And I'm not talking about any fringe leaders in Pakistan. I'm talking about the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Imran Khan Niazi has given an interview. He says the Taliban is not a military outfit. He says they're normal civilians. Why would he say this? He was being asked about not acting against Taliban terrorists who crossed the border into Pakistan. And this is his defense. I'm quoting from what the Pakistani Prime Minister had to say. There are camps of 100,000 people and the Taliban are not some military outfit. Of course, they're not. They're terrorists. They're normal civilians, he says. And if there are some civilians in these camps, how is Pakistan supposed to hunt these people down? How can you call them sanctuaries? Imran Khan's logic is self-defeating, you see. What do you call a group of people who kill in the name of religion, who kill to grab power? Terrorists, civilians, or a military outfit? When you're heading a terror state, you don't see a problem with what the Taliban is doing. And why just a terror state? A superpower that came to vanquish the Taliban has now given them legitimacy and a free pass to run riot in Afghanistan. And for once, the Pakistanis look like the lesser devil here. So let's talk about the superpower in question. It's the 29th of July today. In 33 days from now, America's troop withdrawal from Afghanistan will be complete. All military personnel will be out except 600-odd soldiers. They'll all head back home after failing to defeat the Taliban. It's an embarrassing retreat for the US, and it is not limited to Afghanistan. As we speak, the United States is cutting down on its presence and backing away from its commitments the world over. The global military empire it built for decades, the defense hegemony it established in the name of peace, is being abandoned. Why? Because the so-called objectives that the US set for itself have apparently been achieved. We'll discuss that in detail, but first, let's look at the scale of this decampment. In Guam, which happens to be a US island territory in the Western Pacific, America has pulled back its big bombers like the B-1 and B-52. They were repositioned back to the mainland in April this year. This has happened for the first time in 16 years. The Pentagon says the Guam island will now be used as a forward base only on an as-needed basis. These are their words. Miles away in West Asia, America has pulled back at least 8 anti-missile weapons from Saudi Arabia, from Iraq, Jordan and the UAE. This includes the Patriot and the THAAD defense systems and hundreds of troops who operated them. They've all been taken back to their country. Why? Because the tensions with Tehran are said to be easing and America wants to reduce its footprint in the region to further build on this reconciliation with Iran. It's another matter that they won't give a visa to the next Iranian president. But that's America for you. Then we have Iraq, where the US is preparing to pull back all troops by the end of 2021. This is 18 years after they invaded Iraq in search of weapons of mass destruction. Did they find any? They did not. All they found was barrels full of oil to pump out of the country, but that's not something they'll talk about. President Joe Biden and Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi have sealed an agreement to end all combat missions in Iraq. The US says it will now train and advise the Iraqi military to defend itself from the Islamic State.
Our role in Iraq will be as a dealing with it's just to be available, to continue to train, to assist, to help, and to deal with ISIS as it arrives. But we are not going to be, by the end of the year, in a combat mission.
There's more. In the Pacific, America has pulled back its only aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, based in Japan. It has been repositioned in the Indian Ocean for now. Not for security purposes, just to aid the US withdrawal from Afghanistan. What will happen once the withdrawal is complete? Will the carrier head back to Japan? The US won't say. But critics say that leaving the Pacific devoid of any carrier coverage contravenes America's policy of protecting its allies in the region. Like I said, it's an embarrassing retreat. The US is pulling in its military horns, leaving its allies and partners exposed to threats and uncertain about any future assistance. I have some figures for you tonight. The Biden administration's proposed defense budget for 2021 is $716 billion, 716. That is 4% less than the 2020 defense budget of Donald Trump. The American Navy is maintaining an operational presence of 296 ships. That's down from the Trump administration's goal of 316 ships by 2026. The U.S. Air Force is planning to retire 42 jets from a fleet of 367. They say they're getting rid of the old stuff to make room for the new. Well, in practice, they're getting rid of old conflicts to make room for the new. But what happened to making the Taliban pay? What happened to destroying the ISIS? What happened to defeating radical Islamic terrorism? These are all promises made by U.S. presidents. And yes, fighting all the ills in the world is not America's sole responsibility, but these are also excuses that the US made to invade sovereign countries, especially those with oil or geographical advantage. Now, the US is retreating from the conflicts it escalated. And the president doesn't want to answer questions because he only wants to talk about, quote unquote, happy things. So let me say this. America's inward turn may be good politics. It may be good economics too. But this country subjected others to violence, promising them liberation from tyranny and terror. It invaded foreign lands, promising them democracy. It bought alliances, promising protection from hostile neighbors. For a country that wants to be seen as a superpower, this retreat is humiliating, to say the least. Karl Marx believed that workers have no country. For him, the nation-state was a tool of oppression, hence his famous rallying call, "Workers of the world, unite." You don't know about the workers, but some pretentious communists still cherish this dream, this impossible dream of a communist earth. And some of them are here in India. And guess who's their communist guru? The People's Republic of China. It is celebrating 100 years of the ruling Communist Party. There were big celebrations in Beijing. But Indian communist leaders were stuck home. They felt left out, perhaps, overlooked by Beijing. Then came Redemption Day. The Chinese embassy in India hosted a seminar to celebrate the CCP's centenary, 100 years. Who would the party invite? Hundreds of eager Indian communists to choose from, it seems. But these leaders made the cut. Sitaram Yechuri, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, CPIM, D. Raja, a parliamentarian of the Communist Party of India, G. Devarajan, top leader of the All India Forward Bloc, and Senthil Kumar, a DMK legislator. What did they do at this meeting at the Chinese embassy? Well, basically nothing. The ambassador droned on about Chinese communism, and these leaders sat and listened. They were seat fillers for Beijing's gimmick. The Chinese ambassador took full advantage. He said Beijing wanted peace, non-aggression, and mutual respect. Hollow words. But how did the Indian leaders respond to these words? They sat in silent approval. They congratulated the CCP on its centenary. They spoke highly of the party's quote-unquote great achievements and commended, and I'm quoting again, commended their people-centric governance. How do we know this? This was the Chinese embassy's version of the meeting, and so far these Indian leaders have not denied it, so it's safe to assume that's exactly how it went down. What great achievements were they talking about here? Was it the crackdown in Hong Kong? The ethnic cleansing in Xinjiang? Or maybe the elimination of the Tibetan culture? Modern-day China is a disgrace to Marx and communism, but these Indian leaders fail to realize that. This is the same country that markets expansionism. They attacked and killed Indian soldiers at Galwan Valley. They attempted to grab India's sovereign land. And what do Indian communists do? Attend their seminars, hear sermons on the greatness of Chinese communism. Well, why can't they shake off this unholy loyalty? What ties these people to communist overlords in Beijing? You could say it's a continuation of history. Do you know the CPI was founded not in India, but in Tashkent, Uzbekistan? And back then the party was controlled by Communist International. It was a Soviet propaganda machine. Its mission was global communism. So putting party over country is nothing new for them. Let me give you an example. When China invaded Tibet, this is how the CPI reacted. They applauded Beijing for leading Tibetans from what they called medieval darkness, and they blamed Indian elements for stirring trouble. And this continued when India and China went to war. Some communist leaders openly supported the Chinese. That's how the party split in 1964. If you think this is all water under the bridge, it's not. The Chinese connection has not been severed. I'll tell you about a more recent event. 2017, during the Doklam standoff, the CPIM pinned the blame on the government of India. Would you believe it? And wait till you hear their reasons. India has openly sided with the US position on the South China Sea. India has opposed the Belt and Road Initiative. Within the country, the Modi government has increased the profile of the Dalai Lama and the so-called Tibetan Provisional Government, which are serious irritants for China. This was their logic. So to recap, India escaped a debt trap and sided with a persecuted minority. So the CPIM sees this as an escalation, an irritant for China, as they put it. Do you notice the pattern here? Indian communist leaders have a weak spot for China. They don't even bother hiding it. In the last century, these leaders looked up to the Soviet Union. Now they see China as a spiritual successor. But here's a bitter pill. Neither of these countries deserve to be called communist. They exploited workers. They crushed dissent. They ran extermination camps. One of them disintegrated. The other is still going strong. By tying themselves to China, these Indian communists are crossing to the wrong side of history. What are they hoping for in return? Funds? Organizational support? But at what cost? They're forgetting slain Indian soldiers and forgiving China's crimes. This is not communism. This is not politics or ideology. This is blind faith in an evil empire that has long lost its way. That said, not every society has to contend with such leaders. Some of them are lucky to have a single vision of national interest. Take Israel, for example. The entire country is mobilizing against one ice cream brand, Ben & Jerry's. Their politicians, their diplomats, and their citizens are on the same page. For them, it's not just about ice cream. It's about being fair and just. That was Israel's defense at the United Nations Security Council. That's right, the UNSC was debating ice cream. Though in fairness, this is a contentious scoop. The Palestinian representative fully backed Ben & Jerry's. He said the company must be saluted. The Israeli representative had one question. What about the real offenders like Syria and Iran?
When this council fails to take strong action against the world's worst human rights violators like Iran and Syria, and instead singles out the world's only Jewish state, it is no wonder that companies like Ben & Jerry's and Unilever allow themselves to single out Israel for boycott. These companies have no moral reservations about operating in countries which are truly among the world's worst violators of human rights, while imposing an anti-Semitic boycott on the Jewish state.
You may not buy their defense, but it's difficult to overlook their spirit. 90 Israeli lawmakers have written to the Unilever CEO. They belong to different political parties, different ideologies, but they have joined Israel's maximum pressure campaign. What's this campaign? We'll explain, but first some background. Last week, Ben & Jerry's made a big announcement. Starting 2023, they will stop selling ice cream in Israeli settlements, which means the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Israel immediately had a brain freeze. The government called it an anti-Semitic move. What does the company say? It says selling ice cream in occupied Palestine is inconsistent with their values. Bit of a late realization considering they've been doing it for decades now. Nonetheless, the decision has been made. Come 2023, there will be no Ben & Jerry's in the West Bank. But Israel has not given up. And they have reasons not to. You see, corporates can be a fickle lot. They hate sticking their neck out politically. For years, they've tried to balance Israel and Palestine. Now there's a lot of pressure from the anti-Israel lobbies. We told you about it in our last report. The atmosphere in Ben & Jerry's home city and the politics that's been going on. And so for those reasons and more, Ben & Jerry's has decided to side with the Palestinians here. You can see why Israel is worried. What if more companies follow suit? This would set a bad precedent. So Israel wants to nip this corporate activism in the bud. How will they do it? According to American media reports, Israel is setting in motion a maximum pressure campaign, a meticulous plan to bring this company to heel, convince them to reverse their decision. The first move was made on the 22nd of July, just 3 days after the Ben & Jerry's announcement. The Foreign Ministry of Israel sent a cable to every embassy of the country in North America and Europe. Think of it as an instruction manual. This is what it says. Number one, mobilize Jewish organizations, pro-Israel groups and evangelicals. Urge them to protest outside Ben & Jerry's outlets. Instruction number two, push for statements condemning the company and its executives. This could be from any public figure. Once the statements are out, the diplomats will amplify them on social media. Instruction number three, and this is limited to the US Embassy. Diplomats have been asked to confer with mayors, governors and congressmen. They've been asked to lobby for a legislation against BDS. What's BDS? Boycott, divestment, sanctions. BDS is an anti-Israel movement. So these are some clear-cut instructions, pretty clear-cut. And what is Israel's end game here? They want a sit down with the company. They want to put enough pressure so that Ben & Jerry's will agree to talks. Sounds easy enough. But why would the company change their stance? Well, this is where the PR campaign comes in. You see, Israel has branded this company as anti-Semitic, not a good line for the friendly neighborhood ice cream vendor. Right now, they have the full backing of Unilever and its executives. But what if the campaign intensifies? Things can still go either way because this controversy has so many variables, so many perspectives. Like, should companies be choosing sides in a political dispute? You could say it only complicates matters. Should governments be running smear campaigns against companies? Does it not belittle their sovereign powers? Yes, but Israel will say Ben & Jerry started it. There is no end to this debate, but one thing is clear. A trend has been set. Corporate activism could soon go beyond West Asia. It's not a question of whether it's right or wrong. It's a question of what happens next. So every company must ask itself this. Are we punishing the people for their government's mistakes? And as for governments, the question is a lot deeper. How do cutthroat corporates claim high ground over an elected democracy? We'll leave you with the questions. And we'll come to China, because if you're China, those considerations would never apply. Nothing can be greater than the will of the state in China. The rules are very clear and simple. So if you choose to take on the government, if you're so much as perceived as a remote threat to the government, you will be punished in China. And it doesn't matter who you are, a citizen, a billionaire, a lawmaker, the state will go after you and put you behind bars in Xi Jinping's China. And the people of China realize that. So they are fleeing the country. They're seeking asylum in democratic nations. Not a few hundred or thousand, more than 600,000 Chinese citizens have sought asylum since Xi Jinping became president of China. Our next report tells you more about the great exodus from China.
A mass exodus is underway in China. Under Xi Jinping's rule, Chinese citizens are fleeing the country. Xi took over as president in 2012. Since then, the number of asylum seekers from China every year has risen by more than 6 times. In 2012, more than 15,000 Chinese citizens sought asylum overseas. 8 years later, foreign governments received well over 100,000 asylum applications from China. This massive spike is being directly linked to the rise of Xi Jinping. Since 2012, he became president, more than 600,000 Chinese nationals have applied for asylum in another country. The reasons for this exodus are not unknown. President Xi Jinping has ruled over China with an iron fist. Since 2017, at least 1 million Uyghur Muslims have been detained in mass jails, what Beijing calls re-education camps. Thousands of officials from the government and the Communist Party have been thrown behind bars in the name of curbing corruption. And just last year, Beijing tightened its grip on Hong Kong by imposing a draconian national security law. In China, no one is immune from the state's heavy hand, including billionaires. The latest victim of Beijing's wrath is Sun Dawu, an agricultural mogul. His crime? Gathering a crowd to attack state organs, obstructing government administration, and picking quarrels and provoking trouble. These are charges often used by the Chinese state to go after critics. Sun was an outspoken supporter and friend of Chinese political dissidents. He has been punished with an 18-year-long prison term. Sun's conviction comes during a wide-ranging crackdown on internet billionaires. This week, they lost more than $13 billion from their wealth. The biggest losers included names like Pony Ma, the chairman of Tencent, and Wang Xing, the founder of Meituan. New rules by the Chinese regulators have triggered a massive sell-off at the stock exchanges. Spooked investors have been dumping tech stocks as the Chinese state is tightening its grip on the sector. In the 8 years that he has been in power, Xi Jinping has ordered a sweeping crackdown on Chinese citizens, minorities, and dissenters. No organ of the Chinese state has been left untouched by the president's purge, and now billionaires are under attack. It shouldn't come as a surprise, then, that Chinese citizens are leaving their country in droves. Bureau Report, World is One.
South Africa is sending its troops to Mozambique. Nearly 1,500 military personnel are going there to battle jihadist terror. They'll be fighting alongside troops from Rwanda, Botswana, and 13 other African nations. They've all promised military assistance to Mozambique. Their enemy is Al-Shabaab. It's a terror outfit linked to the Islamic State that plans to establish a caliphate in southern Africa. But is military intervention the answer to terrorism in this region? Our next report explores.
For more than a year now, Mozambique has been in turmoil, struggling to contain Islamist terror. Al-Shabaab, a terror outfit linked to the Islamic State, has been wreaking havoc in the country's north. In the last 12 months, it has ransacked entire towns, gained control of important roadways, destroyed key infrastructure, abducted young women and children, and beheaded hundreds. According to the most recent data, more than 3,100 people have died. 800,000 more have been displaced. The humanitarian situation is alarming. The economic loss is mounting. In March this year, Al-Shabaab carried out a bloody takeover of Palma, a town just 10 kilometers away from a mega gas project. The $20 billion Total natural gas plant, which is the largest investment of its kind in Africa, the project has now suspended operations. Mozambique's economy is suffering. Al-Shabaab is only getting stronger. So what exactly does the terror group want? To make Mozambique the next Syria, establish an Islamic caliphate far beyond its borders. The threat is real for the neighbors of Mozambique. Countries like Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, South Africa, Tanzania, and Rwanda in the extended neighborhood. They're all slowly getting pulled into this conflict. On the 10th of July, Rwanda deployed 1,000 troops to Mozambique.
We are participating with the Mozambican forces to restore order and sanity in Cabo Delgado.
On July 26th, Botswana sent 300 troops to Mozambique. And now South Africa has decided to join Mozambique's war against terror. It is sending a total of 1,495 troops to battle jihadists. They will stay there for a period of 3 months.
South Africa has deployed 1,495 members of the South African National Defence Force to Mozambique to combat terrorism and violent extremists which affected the Cabo Delgado province. South Africa will spend just over 984 million rand on the deployment of the SANDF members.
South Africa's move, much like other African nations, is a part of a broader effort, or the SADC.
The Republic of Mozambique to be deployed in support of Mozambique to combat terrorism.
The remaining 13 are expected to follow suit. The president of Mozambique, who for long has resisted foreign intervention, is now welcoming the effort.
We are at the groups, and in the framework of regional solidarity, we are receiving support from some foreign partners.
A military intervention may be able to defeat the enemy for now, but observers say that for long-term stability, Mozambique will require economic and social interventions. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Has the British monarchy become a royal burden? Looks like it has. The Queen is blackmailing elected parliamentarians, stopping the United Kingdom from advancing towards its sustainable development goals. The British Queen is abusing her ceremonial position to secure her private interests. These are big charges, yes, but there is no smoke without fire. Tonight we have reports and records from Parliament. On the 28th of July, The Guardian reported that the Queen secretly lobbied Scottish ministers for climate law exemption. This was their headline. What is this law? It is called the Heat Networks Act of 2021. The law makes it compulsory for all private landowners of Scotland to sell a certain amount of their land. What for? To facilitate the construction of pipelines to heat homes and businesses using renewable energy. Now, Scottish authorities say the law will help cut carbon emission, reduce fuel poverty, and create green jobs, which is good, except that the law has a very interesting clause. While all landowners are bound to sell land under this law, the Queen is not. The Queen privately owns land in Scotland. She is one of the largest landowners, but she is exempt from the law. Why is that? Because the Queen blackmailed the Scottish Parliament into exempting her. You see, the Queen enjoys a ceremonial power. It is called the Queen's consent, which basically means that her consent, her assent is required for a bill to become a law. And then there are times when her assent is required before a bill is even tabled. And this is when the bill affects the Queen's own interests, her property or hereditary revenues. The Heat Networks Bill fell under the second category. So you needed the Queen's nod before tabling the bill. In January this year, the Queen's office was informed that her consent was needed to table this bill. It would allow the compulsory buying of land from landowners, including the Queen. A couple of days later, communication began between the Queen's lawyers and the office of Scotland's then Energy Minister, Paul Wheelhouse. The lawyers tell him that they are concerned about the bill. So the minister agrees to amend it. And we have a copy of the amendment. Look at page 7, section 75. Paul Wheelhouse makes an amendment, and this is what he says: the Scottish ministers must not authorise under subsection 1 any acquisition in relation to land which belongs to Her Majesty in right of a private estate unless the appropriate authority consents to the acquisition. Parliament proceedings record that an independent parliamentarian called Andy Whiteman opposed this amendment. He said it's wrong to single out the Queen for preferential treatment. Allow me to read out from the Parliament's records there. This is what Andy Whiteman says. I have no objections to the Queen owning property in a private capacity. However, she cannot, on the one hand, claim rights to private estates as a private citizen, and on the other hand, continue to be exempt from the rules that govern the affairs of all other private citizens who own land. We should not be seeking to make any exemptions for Her Majesty. To this, Paul Wheelhouse says the amendment is, quote-unquote, required to ensure the smooth passing of the bill. In other words, if we don't exempt her from this law, she will not give her consent to the bill. If this is not blackmailing, if this is not abuse of office, what is? This copy of the law tells you that it received royal assent on the 30th of March 2021. What it doesn't tell you is the length to which the Crown lobbied and blackmailed to tailor the law to suit the Queen's interest. Now the question is, can she do that? Does the Queen's consent allow the Queen to interfere with legislative process? I highly doubt it does. This bill was about climate emergency. The Queen had no right to put hurdles on the path. This is a Queen who publicly endorses green policy. When opening the new session of the British Parliament in the month of May, the Queen said, and I'm quoting again, "The United Kingdom is committed to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and will continue to lead the way internationally by hosting the COP26 summit in Glasgow." Speaking about climate change, the Queen said, "We are going to have to change the way we do things." This was as recent as the 1st of July, this month. This is what she said. We should change the way we do things. Maybe it's time someone reminded the Queen that this change, the one that she's talking about, starts at home. It's time the British royal household shed its hypocrisy. On the one hand, you have Prince William, his father Charles, the Queen, and the whole royal household campaigning to protect the planet, cut emissions. On the other hand, legislations aimed at cutting emissions are being blocked and interfered with. By whom? By the Queen herself. As we speak, the Queen is the only person in Scotland exempt from an initiative to cut carbon emissions. How is the UK okay with this? How can the Queen be allowed to use her position to set the country back from its sustainable development goals? Let me remind you, we're talking about a non-elected, hereditary, ceremonial head of state. Should she be allowed to lobby, allowed to make changes to bills stitched together by elected representatives? What happened in Scotland, by the way, it was not a first. The Queen has lobbied countless times before this. In 1968, the Crown ensured that road safety rules do not apply to her private estates. In 1975, she lobbied against bills concerning leasing of private land for development. Some 40 years later, history repeated itself again, and these are just the cases that have come out that we know about. This is not how a constitutional monarchy functions. The Crown is becoming a royal burden for the United Kingdom, becoming a hurdle in its path of development. Again, how are the voters okay with it? Now, the black hole has fascinated humans for a long time. We have theories on what lies inside it. But that's all that we have, theories, no concrete evidence as to how this giant void functions. But what if you could peep inside a black hole? What would you see? A group of scientists from Stanford University did exactly that. And what they saw vindicated the most decorated physicist of the 20th century. Here's the story.
What lies beyond the great chasm of space? Beyond the dark monstrosity that we call the black hole. Our theories have been primed by Hollywood, but exhaustive sci-fi narratives cannot explain the black hole, let alone what lies beyond it. Scientists offered some new evidence this week. They spotted light from the other side of the black hole. This isn't just strange, it's outright impossible. Or at least, that's what we thought. A black hole is basically a collapsed star. It vanquishes all light that enters it. Any light that goes in does not come back out. So where is this beam coming from? And how did scientists spot it? They were on a fairly routine experiment studying X-rays emitted by a black hole at the center of the Milky Way. Along with the X-rays, they noticed additional flashes of light. They were smaller, delayed, and colorful. The scientists were dumbstruck. But 106 years ago, a German physicist had already figured this out. a certain Albert Einstein. The black hole discovery confirms Einstein's theory on general relativity. He believed black holes can bend light rays, and today he's been vindicated. Experts agree that black holes can warp space, bend light, and twist magnetic fields. So the beams that these scientists saw were echoes. They were reflections of light heading away from Earth. Which begs the question, where did it come from? There's still much to learn about black holes, about where this light is coming from and where it leads to. But one thing is clear, a black hole isn't just nothingness. It has a far side, and it's emitting light. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Yesterday we showed you what climate change is doing to the wildlife. We showed you videos of salmon being boiled alive by the heat wave, shellfish, over 1 billion of them being charred by the heat. Tonight we turn to humans. Let's look at what the rising temperature is doing to us, how climate change is affecting our lives, our sports, our cup of coffee, our surroundings. Our next report shows you what climate change is doing to us.
In Tokyo, the rising temperature is interfering with Olympic Games and taking a toll on athletes. Tennis world number 2 Daniil Medvedev was seen struggling during the match. He looked exhausted by the heat and humidity. He had to take 2 medical timeouts. Call his trainer, use a fan to cool himself. At one point, the chair umpire asked Medvedev if he could continue playing. The Russian athlete said, "I can finish the match, but I can die." "If I die, are you going to be responsible?" It's 88 degrees Fahrenheit in Tokyo. That's 31 degrees Celsius. The heat index makes it feel like 37 degrees Celsius. Imagine playing outdoor sports in such conditions. Is Tokyo always this hot in the months of July and August? A scorching sun is normal, but this year the temperature is above normal. You know why? Climate change. Some 17,000 kilometers away, climate change has ruined coffee crops in Brazil. Low temperatures and drought have resulted in the loss of 70% of coffee crops, leaving farmers like Jose Almeida shaking their heads over their catastrophic losses. Almeida lost 70% of his crop. Many others lost everything.
It is sad. It is not just the work from 1 year that we lost, it is the work of an entire lifetime. It takes time to get this far, investments in machines. We have a very well cared for and productive crop. The costs are very high.
Brazil accounts for nearly 40% of the global coffee trade. Damage to this supply chain translates to a surge in price. The price of lower quality Robusta has already grown to 40% this year. A good cup of Arabica is likely to become dearer too. This is what climate change looks like. Also this. This is what Belgium looked like earlier this month, hit by freak weather. The country recorded its worst floods in decades. At least 38 people died. A Belgian judge has now opened an investigation. He is looking into possible manslaughter. A magistrate has been tasked with identifying those responsible for, quote-unquote, involuntary homicide by lack of foresight or precaution. Did Belgium's food alert system fail? Authorities are now trying to answer this question. Here's something else authorities worldwide must try to answer. Would any of these have happened had countries done more to control climate change? The window for climate action is still open. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Clearly, time is running out. Humanity is falling behind in tackling climate change. But there's one area where there is reason to cheer, especially for India. We'd almost lost the Royal Bengal tiger, but India has managed to bring the big cat back from the brink of extinction. So today, on International Tiger Day, here's a rare success story, the story of how India is saving the tiger.
An alarming prediction was made in 1973. India had just finished conducting a census of the tigers. The news was dire. Less than 2,000 tigers were left. The Royal Bengal tiger was on the verge of extinction due to widespread hunting and poaching. That prediction was made almost 50 years ago. Now the tide has slowly begun to turn. India has managed to bring the big cat back from the brink of extinction. Tiger population in India has grown significantly. It stood at less than 2,000 in 2006. The last census of the tiger population was carried out in 2018. The numbers had shot up to almost 3,000. Today, India is home to 70% of the wild tigers in the world. A series of significant decisions led to the dramatic turnaround. It began with a complete ban on tiger hunting. The next move was to set up tiger reserves around India. In 1973, when the tiger population had dropped, India had just 9 tiger reserves. Today, that number has grown to 51. They are spread out across 18 states of India. These reserves allowed the tigers to make a comeback. The Indian government wants to do more. On International Tiger Day today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated India's commitment to ensure safe habitats for tigers. He said that India has already achieved the target of doubling the population of tigers in 4 years. A lot more remains to be done, but India is on the right track to save the big cat. Bureau Report, World is One.
On that positive note, it's a wrap. We're leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.